Thank you so much, and welcome everybody. I am Karen Fox with NASA's Office of Communications. Welcome to today's media teleconference on a new independent scientific study that NASA is commissioning on unidentified aerial phenomena. These are the observations of events in the sky that cannot be identified as aircraft or known natural phenomena. We have 3 people available to talk today about this new study. They'll each speak for a few minutes, but we are going to try to leave the bulk of the time for questions. We have Thomas Zurbuchen, Associate Administrator of the agency's Science Mission Directorate in Washington, D.C. We have Daniel Evans, who is the Assistant Deputy Associate Administrator for Research in the Science Mission Directorate. And we have David Spergel, who will be the lead for this study and who is also the president of the Simons Foundation. Once we get to the question and answer portion, you may press *1 to get into the queue to ask a question, and our operator, Holly, will give you more details when we get to that point. However, for now, we will start out, and welcome, Thomas Zurbuchen. Talking to you.
Well, thanks so much, Karen. I want to first say that, of course, part of our task at NASA is given to us by the Congress is not only to do fundamental research in the skies and so forth, but as part of that also to find life elsewhere. That's why we've built astrobiology programs in many disciplines across the summary field that looks at both extinct life on Mars, for example, but also looks at patterns of life elsewhere, perhaps in Europe, perhaps in Enceladus as we go forward, but also as we look at exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system, looking for the question whether certain environments are in fact part of kind of the, if you want, the ladder of life that got us to where we are. So the tools that we're using, whether it's in this field, they're also kind of in fields that then go towards kind of intelligent life, such as technosignatures, which we have programs for already, are the same tools that we use everywhere, the tools that we're frankly using here, and that is that we're commissioning a study to start early in the fall to examine unidentified aerial phenomena. The study will focus on identifying available data, how to best collect future data, and how NASA can use these data to move the scientific understanding of UAPs forward. A short way I would talk about that is take a field that is relatively data poor, make it into a field that is much more data rich and therefore worthy of scientific investigation and analysis. NASA's mission, of course, as I just said, is to explore the unknown in air and space. And we have access, frankly, as part of that, to a broad range of observations of Earth and space. And frankly, that's the lifeblood of our scientific inquiry. We have the tools and teams who can help us improve our understanding of the unknown. And we are prepared to use these powerful tools of scientific discovery, in this case, as much as anything else, using exactly the same kind of approach that we always use. Unidentified phenomena in the atmosphere of interest for many reasons. Frankly, I think there's new science to be discovered. There's been many times where something that looked almost magical turned out to be a new scientific effect. But there's also national security and air safety issues that have been discussed elsewhere that, of course, relate to these observations. And establishing, with events that are, whether they're natural or whether they are kind of need to be explained otherwise, is very much aligned with NASA's goals that ensure, of course, that we discover the unknown, but also ensures the safety of aircraft that, of course, are in that airspace that these phenomena occur. This independent study will be led by astrophysicist David Spergel, who's the president of the Simons Foundation in New York City, and has previously been the chair of astrophysics in the Department of Princeton and University of Princeton, New Jersey. Dan Evans, the assistant deputy associate administrator for research, is really the wheels on the bus, kind of really making sure that we're interfacing with this. Some people may ask why David, why Dan. First of all, Dan, with his tremendous experience, both as a researcher but also as an enabler for research, his work that he did in the White House previously, I think has tremendous insight into kind of the cross interagency aspect that relates to some of these discussions. And David Spergel, I think, to all of us in astrophysics really understand that he's one of the most trusted voices in so many questions. Also a person who understands really the power of science and is willing and able to use that power of science kind of in areas where I would say kind of fall under that what we would refer to as high risk, high impact kind of research, kind of areas that many of the scientists may be a little bit more timid to walk into. So Dave, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Thanks, Thomas. To start, this is a really exciting project. One of the most exciting things in science are things that we don't understand. And my starting point, and I think all of our starting points of this, is there are phenomena that we don't understand. And then how do we start to make progress? We have a very limited set of observations right now of these UAPs. This makes it difficult to draw conclusions. So we start by trying to figure out what data is out there. And we're going to be working with government, nonprofits, companies, civilians, and try to identify what data is already there. Then start to think about what data should we collect in the future, and how are we going to analyze it. We actually have a wealth of data about our atmosphere. Right? We observe it both from above and below, and whether it's air traffic management data, astronomers looking up, satellites looking down. And what we want to start with is just synthesizing the data we have and see what information we have and see what information we need. And our plan is to conduct an open inquiry that we hope will advance our understanding, so that when this is done, we at least have a roadmap of how to move forward in understanding in this area. So let me now turn this over to Dan Evans, who will talk a bit more about the study itself.
Thanks, David. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give you some quick details on this study from a NASA perspective. But I wanted to start by saying that over the decades, NASA has answered the call to tackle some of the most perplexing mysteries we know of, and this is no different. I do want to underscore that NASA is uniquely positioned to address UAP, because who other than us can use the power of data and of science to look at what's happening in our skies. And quite frankly, this is why we do what we do. Now, for this study specifically, we plan on bringing together some of the country's leading scientists, aeronautics experts, and data practitioners. We expect the study to kick off in the early fall. It should take about 9 months to complete. And I want to make this point emphatically, that very much consistent with our principles of openness, transparency, and scientific integrity, the full report will be made available to the public, and we expect to hold a public meeting to discuss the study's findings. And with that, I will pass it back to Karen Fox.
Fantastic, thank you. We are ready to take questions, and I will pass it to Holly, our operator, just to walk us through the process there. And Holly, it's all you.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please unmute your phone, press star 1, and record your first and last name clearly when prompted so I may introduce you. Again, that is star 1. Our first question comes from Chris Davenport with the Washington Post. You may go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much. I just wonder, for Dave or Dr. Z, do you go into this study with any sort of hypothesis that could explain the UAPs? And then also, Dr. Z, during your speech this morning, you said you didn't want to shy away from these types of studies, even if they're controversial or, could, I think you said, cause some sort of reputational harm. I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that and if you expect any kind of pushback. Thanks.
Go ahead, Dave.
David, are you there? Can you take the first question?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So I would say the only preconceived notion I have coming into this is that we should be open to the idea that we're looking at several different phenomena. This has been my experience when we have some observational phenomena we don't know what it is, that we classify several different things into one grouping. So we need not look for, we may find that one explanation accounts for some set of events and a different explanation accounts for others. So, there's a pretty wide range of what might be accounting for these events. And I have not looked at all the data that's available and believe in trying to not come in with preconceived notions until we have a better look at the data.
So if you asked me that question, frankly, David, I would have said almost the same thing. I really believe, generally speaking, my sense is that don't ever underestimate what nature can do for you. I just really believe the natural world. Sometimes we have this assertion that we understand the natural world and everything that's not explained with the laws of nature that we have right now is somehow not natural. And I just really believe that there's a lot to learn still. We learned that, frankly, as we turn around, put up telescopes, look into the deep sky, there's a lot to learn. And I think the same is true when we look at our own planet and even our own airspace. The reason I talked about kind of reputational risk relative to that, it's clear that, in a traditional type of science environment, kind of talking about some of these issues may be considered kind of selling out or kind of talking about things that are not actual science. I just really vehemently oppose that. I really believe that the quality of science is not only measured by the outputs that come behind it, but also the questions we're willing to tackle with science. This, of course, is the reason why millions of lives were saved during this pandemic, because of the amazing scientists that looked at new ways of creating kind of vaccines before they were truly useful and then being deployed. There's many examples that where people kind of lean forward into a field that is not yet accepted, it's controversial, or attacks some reputational risks. So I do believe, in some domains, surely, this will not just be met with utter enthusiasm, but I do believe that it's absolutely necessary for us, whether it's in this, but also in other places, to really, in fact, lean into those kind of high risk, high impact kind of areas.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit, I think we have to approach all these questions with a sense of humility. I spent most of my career as a cosmologist. I could tell you we don't know what makes up 95% of the universe. So there are things we don't understand. I hope this study moves us forward to understanding these phenomena better. But at the end of the day, we may conclude that we still don't understand many aspects of them and perhaps have a roadmap on how to make progress.
All right, I think we're ready for our next question. Thank you so much.
Our next question is from Lauren Grush with The Verge. You may go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My question is for Thomas Zurbuchen, kind of piggybacking off of what Christian was asking. So in the announcement today, NASA stressed that UAPs are unlikely to be extraterrestrial in origin, but then proceeded to talk about NASA's efforts to search for alien life. And then today, opening this presser, you talked about intelligent life and technosignatures. So I'm wondering if NASA is trying to make a connection that UAPs are some kind of alien technology, and if not, why include that language? Thank you.
Yeah, I think what the intent was in that press release is to really say that at this moment in time, kind of there's with the evidence that we have, if you looked at the broader scientific community and also in general, I think it would be hard to find irrefutable evidence for a given event being one or the other. And it's certainly there's no kind of marquee event that anybody, a whole group of independent scientists and so forth, which of course, as you know, is the standard of scientific consensus, would agree that it's of that nature. I do believe that actually says very little about the event themselves. It just says a lot about the availability of data, which is, by the way, exactly where we're focused on this. The reason I pointed out the astrobiology and technosignatures is to just throw out, and many people miss that sometimes, kind of as a, and people tweet at me, and it's obvious that they don't know that we have demonstrated over the past years and frankly even decades our interest in the overall question of finding life elsewhere and also finding intelligent life elsewhere using the tools of science. So that's why I brought it up. If somebody asks me, do I really think that there is irrefutable evidence for intelligent life here in one of these phenomena, and otherwise, I would give an answer that's absolutely acceptable as a scientist, which is I don't know, because there is not from where I'm looking at that's not what the overall support for that to get to that part. It's just a very high bar in all cases. I think additional data will really bring us to learning a lot more. How much closer we get to answering that question, as David just said, is something we don't know yet. You need to do the research before you can answer that.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question.
Our next question is from Jeff Faust with Space News. You may go ahead.
Good afternoon. A couple of procedural questions about the study. What's the process going to be for picking the team that's going to be working on the study? And then what's the budget NASA's allocated for this, and where is the funding coming from to support the study? Thanks.
Go ahead, Dan.
This is Dan Evans. I think I can answer that one. So when we orchestrate studies like this, it is no different to any of the hundreds of review panels that we put together annually to look at grant applications, for instance. NASA has the discretion of appointing these members, but we do so following wide consultation with the members of the community as to the types of individuals who would serve in an incredible capacity on such a high-profile team. So it's our discretion, but we will consult extremely widely. Let's speak about budget. Again, this is very consistent with our standard grant review panels. So a budget, we would estimate is anywhere between a few tens of thousands of dollars, certainly no more than $100K.
All right, thank you. We'll take the next question.
Our next question is from Joey Roulette with Reuters. You may go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Question for Dr. Zurbuchen. Pentagon and NASA officials have talked about NASA's involvement in this UAP kind of research effort in the past. And I think when you and I actually talked about it like a year ago, you said kind of NASA was looking into this and seeing how it could help UAP efforts and kind of similar things that was announced today. So I guess I'm just wondering, why announce this now, and what prompted plans to kind of form this study panel, and also what progress, if any, has NASA made in the UAP effort before today? Thanks.
The Department of Defense kind of work is clearly there and has drawn a lot of attention. It's always very hard, if you say, hey, that has nothing to do with what we're doing. Somebody else, said, like, hey, was it your new boss, the administrator Nelson who made you do this? And it's very hard to say, it's like, oh, that had absolutely no influence. Of course it has influence. But I want you to know that the major reason we're doing it now is because of the science, interest, and because of the safety kind of issues that relate to this airspace that we think matters. As opposed to, if we could have done it a little bit earlier, that's perfectly fine. But we really started thinking about this, especially in the context of kind of the overall dialogue. We've been working on this for a while, really trying to make sure that we set this up the right way, because at the end, kind of the quality of science investigations need to be the same no matter what we do, and we will insist on it here also. The one difference, of course, between this and other agencies is we expect this to be entirely in the public domain, which is what Dan Evans already said.
All right, thank you. We'll go to the next question.
Our next question is from Marina Koren with The Atlantic. You may go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Two questions for Thomas. First, to follow up on what Joey asked, whose idea was it for NASA to establish this UAP study team? Did it come from Administrator Nelson and he directed you to make these moves? And you also said that this effort lines up with NASA's air safety goals. Why then is the team going to be housed in the Science Mission Directorate and not, for example, the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate? Thank you.
So you saw the administrator kind of directing me in front of camera before that, hey, Thomas, you should deal with that. His instinct is exactly right. The science discipline is where these questions should be addressed. But it is my decision to put this up. I did not. I was not asked by anybody to do this or find this particular approach. This is the way I believe this should be done to actually add to this discussion, and it's well proven. Frankly, an approach I've used before in multiple occasions to really go into a field and kind of tackle a problem that is very much kind of ambiguous kind of when you start. So I think it's exactly the right way to go. The fact that we get one of the best leaders, I believe, in the field really will give this a lot, with David Spergel and Dan Evans, will really give this a lot of credence. That's my decision.
All right.
This is Dan here. I just quickly point out that this wasn't done in a vacuum. We, of course, have consulted with our counterparts in aeronautics within NASA. They've been absolutely tremendous in helping us stand up this. And in the charge to the independent study team that Thomas presented this morning at the National Academies, you can actually see that there are numerous airspace safety charge elements in there that were directly introduced by our counterparts in aeronautics. So, we're doing this in lockstep with them.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Dan. The way we're organized into disciplines, there's multiple ways of organizing this, but one organization needs to take charge of it. And what we've done in a number of cases, look at the Commercial Lunar Payload Services. There's basically 4 entities are funding that we own it here. There's other things that other entities are running for us. Some of the space station work is running over by Kathy Leader's organization, but we have a lot of science impacts. The same is true with Deep Space Network and others, right? So just I don't think there's more message to it other than us trying to figure out where's the central part of the investigation and kind of tipped in our favor. The fact that the administrator kind of gave me the action certainly also had an influence.
All right, we'll go on to the next question.
Our next question is from Michael Sheets with CNBC. You may go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm curious about the existing resources and data sets, databases across NASA. Who before now has been really, in charge of collecting NASA's side of things? Obviously, we talked a little bit about the Pentagon Task Force that's been collecting data and just recently testified showing a couple of videos of UAP instances. But I'm curious about, what you guys already know and maybe over the decades have collected of instances and maybe that the public wasn't aware of before.
So I think I'm going to get started and then I'm going to kick it over to Dan. I'm not aware of any systematic or even kind of sporadic kind of examinations of NASA data with that in mind. I'm sure there are some, but I'm not aware of any. Certainly not at the level that came to my attention. The way we have done this, right? Of course, what we're doing is with our 20+ assets that are in space and an increasing number of commercial partners, we're looking at the Earth in new ways, and we're also looking the other way at the sky in new ways with assets that we have, but also with assets that the National Science Foundation and others are putting up, including commercial entities. And then the question just really is, how do we use technologies such as AI and ML and other technologies that, by the way, are of high priority for us here to kind of really make progress in sifting through the data towards finding some of these kind of interesting events that have the characteristics of UAP. So the data are here. Kind of our respective organizations have them and have done it. And the data are public. So I really don't know whether other people use these data for their research. I sure hope they are. We're always very excited if people pull down data and kind of investigate them with their own interest in mind.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add on that, I don't think anybody at NASA has, sort of systematically looked into UAPs in the past, at least to my knowledge. But I think that one of the things that this independent study will find is that there is an enormous wealth of data that is held in public archives that can be brought to bear upon this problem. Remember, one of the things we're trying to do here, again, as Thomas said, is to turn what is ostensibly a data poor field into a data rich one. And that's when we can really begin to tackle those interesting questions that are on the tips of everybody's tongues about UAPs.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to our next question.
Our next question is from Gadi Schwartz with NBC. You may go ahead.
Hey there, just following up on that last question. So dovetailing, NASA has tens of thousands of hours of video of spacecraft, the International Space Station. It can be argued that NASA's got more access to public data looking up and looking down than any other public organization in the world. So are we to understand that you will be reviewing all that's accessible publicly within NASA, as well as other public videos or signals intelligence or whatever that may be, and putting it in a study for $100,000 or less?
Okay, I can answer that. This is Dan. This is no different to any scientific investigation that we would undertake. And the first step in any of those investigations is to figure out what data is at hand. That's step one. This is all this study is doing, is to figure out what data one might use to interrogate better UAP. Okay, we're not actually going to be, certainly within that budget, analyzing those data directly. This is just step one. What data are out there that could be brought to bear upon the problem?
All right, we'll move on to the next question. Oh, sorry, was there something more?
Yeah. Just to clarify, so what will that be? So there will be no determination on whether this is prosaic or something else. It'll just be basically what we've kind of seen from the DoD, which is we have 200 and some cases or such and such many cases of unexplained phenomena. Is that what the final product or the final first product may look like at the end of this study?
Why don't I take that one? My guess is that the final product, and frankly, I want to kick it over to Dave in just a sec here. But what I expect the final product to look like is to really address the questions that relate to what are the data we should be looking at, how should we be doing that, are there data we should get that are not currently there. So it's much more kind of that the output from this particular study is not to sift through all the data and do all this research. It's to kind of make a proposal for a research program that we can then implement based on the inputs and the principles that are there. Dave, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, I mean, just to reinforce what Thomas said, I think we will end up probably saying, look, here's the data we have. Usually when you do that, you then reach the conclusion that, well, the data we have is okay, but if only we took the data differently, observe from above and below a certain region of the sky at the same time, for example. I mean, without having done the analysis, I don't know what it'll look like. But ways of observing in the future that might give much more insight, ways of analysis in the future. Thomas mentioned AI and ML. We now have a lot of methodologies that are effective at finding anomalous events, finding fast-moving objects, finding objects that move anomalously. I'm imagining we will end up pointing it perhaps in future directions that NASA may want to consider future stuff. We will hopefully at least lay out some of a roadmap of how we might make progress in the future.
Great, thank you so much. We will move on to the next question.
And our next question is from Kenneth Chang with the New York Times. You may go ahead.
Thank you. This is for Thomas. So I was wondering, now that NASA is sort of openly to the possibility that there could be intelligent aliens visiting Earth, what are the prospects that NASA could get back into business looking for alien intelligence in the universe? NASA has done hardly any SETI work for decades, and a lot of it was because of skepticism from Congress, but it seems Congress seems to be more open to that now.
So we have done work on both looking at the sky at a variety of wavelength ranges, but also looking for techno signatures, and I'm currently funding those research projects. And so yes, it is true that there was a period where perhaps that was less abundant, but now we've deliberately included that into our research portfolio. So I'm not aware of research we're artificially stifling from one or the other side. What we're really trying to do here, though, is start the investigation without an outcome in mind. Really being open to many different options. I think David Spergel said it well, right? Being aware that multiple sources of explanations could be there, but I'm not aware of any guidance that I have or that I've implemented that would prohibit a given set of research.
And we do have some things that have been funded on technosignatures. If you want me to follow up with you on that, our one set of guidance is always from space observations, because that is what we do. So we don't fund from ground-based observations. But if nothing else on that, we can move to the next question.
Our next question is from Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle. You may go ahead.
Hi. This is following up a little bit on just how UAPs have been observed thus far. So, a lot of the DoD observations released have been from naval aviators. And so, David, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about the study you said might be extended to telescopes or satellites. Do you know if these have been used before to spot any of these UAPs? And I know part of this is figuring out how to collect data in the future, but if you could just talk to how maybe we're looking at things other than just naval aviators. Thank you.
As far as I know, and though I expect to learn more as the study goes forward, I do not know of any systematic study to do that with grounders. Either ground-based telescopes looking up, atmospheric observations, or downward-looking satellites, civilian satellites. I do not know of any systematic study. I suspect that there's actually a wealth of data that we have collected, just not looked at.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next question.
Our next question is from Miriam Kramer with Axios. You may go ahead.
Hi, this question is for Thomas and David, I think. Do you think that UAPs should be discussed in the same breath as other more mainstream scientific searches for life in the universe, whether it be, looking for microbes on Mars or technosignatures? Thanks.
I'll let you go, David.
Yeah, I would group them more at this point with, when you're looking for life on Mars, you know what you're, in a sense, you start out with a hypothesis that you want to test, and you start out with a model you want to test. The approach I think we want to take here is a different one. This is a phenomenon we don't understand, and we want to collect more data on the phenomenon. I don't think we want to go in with particular hypotheses coming into this.
Yeah, I agree with this. I want to say, in my scientific lifetimes, some of these night glowing clouds that were frankly hypothesized being having very different origins that we now know they have, was an analogy of that, an event, a phenomena that had certain characteristics, and kind of by bringing data to bear, and eventually models could be explained. So it really is. It's more that. Again, to get to that answer, multiple routes of investigation were pursued, and multiple hypotheses were put forward. And at the end, it turned out to be a really beautiful set of science going forward. So yes, it really is kind of a slightly different approach, but an approach that is very common in science, right? Sometimes you just don't understand something, and you start poking at it from multiple directions.
Great. We've got gorgeous pictures of those noctilucent clouds that Thomas just mentioned. If everybody's interested, I can pass them along too. We can go on to the next question.
Our next question is from Mike Wall with Space.com. You may go ahead.
Thank you, guys. This one's probably for Dr. Z. Do you hope one of the outcomes of this study is just kind of normalize this sort of research program going forward? Taking something that might be a little outre, but bringing it more into the mainstream and giving like kind of NASA's imprimatur to that will bring more people into this study? I mean, is that one of the outcomes that you hope to achieve? Is to kind of like normalize this sort of thinking going forward?
One of the outcomes of the study for me would be to kind of communicate to everybody, whether it's our own community and more broadly, that the science process is a valid process for any and all problems, including that one. So for me, I turn it on its head. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I just really believe that these kind of processes that have proven to be so transformative on how we understand our universe are very much useful, including for those problems.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And we have time for only one more question today. For those we don't get to, do feel free to reach out directly to me, Karen Fox, or to the newsroom, and we will try to get your questions answered. But we have one more question, so I'll toss it to you, Holly, for that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. You may go ahead.
Thanks very much. I think this is probably for Dr. Spergel. As the study group leader, will you have access to classified information? And if not, how will that limit the scope of what you're able to collect?
I do not have classified clearance, and we want this to be an open study. So what we will rely on is some members of the committee will have clearances. If we need some insights, we can obtain them, I hope. But mostly, I think we will be trying to see what we can learn from the open data. As we've mentioned already, I think there's actually likely a lot of information in the open data that has not been looked at yet, not been used. And we can use open processes for learning much more going into the future.
This is Dan. If I may quickly add on to that, one of the things that we aim to do by setting up this study is to acknowledge that there's been a lot of work done in the DoD realm about this already, but see what we can contribute using the tools of science. And so it's extremely important to us that this remain a fully transparent, open, and therefore unclassified study, right? We want the report to be published in full, in its entirety. We're going to be having public meetings about this too. And so that necessitates that it be unclassified. And as I think we've learned over the course of these 40 minutes, there's a great wealth of data out there that we can use already. So I don't really see the need to partition this in a classified sense.
Thank you so much, Dan. And did you address what you wanted to off of the last person's question as well, or did you want to add in?
I'll just quickly say that one of the things you may have heard in the congressional hearings a few weeks ago was that there is a great deal of stigma associated with UAP among our naval aviators and aviation communities. One of the things that we tangentially hope to do as part of this study, simply by talking about it in the open, is to help to remove some of the stigma associated with it. And that will yield, obviously, increased access to data, more reports, more sightings, etc. So that's another thing that we're trying to accomplish with this.
Great. Well, thank you so much. There was a lot of interest today, and I am sorry we could not get to everybody's questions, but we had, this was fit in quickly around people's schedules, and we were not able to keep all of our experts the whole time. But as I said, please go ahead and send any additional questions to me, karen.fox@nasa.gov, or to the NASA newsroom, and we will attempt to address them. For those who maybe started a little bit late or who want to have a copy of this, we are going to have shortly, probably within about an hour, a tape that we can share. We will put the link up at nasa.gov on the feature that announced today's information about the study. So we will add a link there, and you will be able to get a recording of this media telecon. So I really appreciate it, and that will wrap it up for today. Thank you so much.